Hi guys, welcome to my world. My name is Wanja and this is Wanja's World. We're gonna do the simplest pizza recipe out there, and these are the ingredients. I'm using bread flour because it has a higher protein content than all-purpose flour, but I recently just started using bread flour because I've been making a lot of bread, but lack of bread flour has never stopped me from making pizza before. You're gonna have some salt because salt is flavor. Gonna have some yeast because your dough must rise. I have some oil. Purists call for olive oil, but I use what I have, and that's canola oil. And we have some good old sugar because the yeast must eat. Alrighty. So the recipe I'm giving you is enough for 2 pizzas because my family can comfortably go through 2 pizzas in one sitting. I have 1 cup of warm water, because you want your yeast to be active, but you don't want to kill it. So too hot, you kill your yeast. Too cold, and your yeast is lazy, and it does not prove as much as with warm water. Then I'm going to take half a teaspoon of my active dry yeast. Now, I use my yeast about 2 to 3 times a week, so I know my yeast is alive and I know it's active. So I don't need to give it time to prove. And again, it's active dry yeast. So I know the minute I put it in here, it's gonna start working. So that's 1/4 teaspoon. I'm aiming for half, so I'm gonna do 2. And then once I'm done with it, I'm gonna put it in my fridge because I want it to continue being alive. And I can already smell my yeast acting because I can smell the fermentation, and that's how you know your yeast is alive. To this, I'm gonna add a tablespoon of sugar, and this is just normal sugar. A tablespoon of that. Just gonna sprinkle it in there. I'm gonna do a tablespoon of my oil. And I just recently broke my oil jar, so I haven't had a chance to buy another one. So there we go, that's a tablespoon of oil. I'm gonna mix this and start adding my flour. Because again, I'm not giving my yeast time to prove because I know it's alive. Grab the spatula, I'm gonna give this a good mix. And then once this is done, I'm gonna start adding in my flour. I'm gonna start with 2 cups of flour and then gradually add more until my dough just comes together. And generally with pizza dough, you can get away with having a dough that's on the wetter side. And I will always insist when we're baking to scoop and level out. But with this dough, I can confidently do this because this does not need to be very accurate. It's a forgiving dough. So there we go, that's 1 cup. Mix this in really well. And then I'm gonna take another cup. And so my storage containers came with this, and this is a cup measure. So it's very convenient. That's another cup. I'm just gonna mix this. And if you think it's a bit dry, don't be afraid. It's gonna come together. It takes your flour a couple of minutes to be able to absorb the liquids that you put into it. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch. Here I am, clean hands, and I'm just gonna start pressing this. Just knead into it firmly. Press and roll it just so it takes up all that flour. And I know it looks like a lot of flour right now, but I promise you it's all gonna get absorbed. So, and like I said, if it feels a little wet, that's fine. But if it's uncomfortable and it's sticking to your hands too much, you can add flour in here, a tablespoon at a time, until it's comfortable. And I'm not gonna tell you how that is because like I said, pizza is very forgiving. If it's a little more wet, that's fine. If you want it a little more firm, that's fine. So I'm gonna work on mine a little bit and see if I want to add more flour. And again, just kneading it also helps make it less tacky. And we don't want to knead this for a specific amount of time. We just want to knead it until we can stretch it without breaking. Then we'll know it's ready for its fast proof. So this is what I'm talking about. At this point, if I try and stretch my dough, it breaks. So that means we're going to continue kneading it until the gluten is just activated, and this stretches when you pull on it. If you're a purist, you can try and pass it through the window. You can try and take it through the window pane test, and that's why you take a small piece and stretch it until you can see light through it. But again, that's not what we're going for. We just want to activate our gluten and we'll be good to go. See, the more I knead, the less sticky it is. So it was a good call not to add any flour. And again, we're gonna try stretch it out. Still need some work. Alrighty, so my dough is well done. Look at that, it's soft and it's pliable. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna oil this baby up. My neutral oil. I'm gonna put some on in the bowl, just a little bit, a glug, very technical term. Don't put the lid in it, don't put the top in it, and then use your dough to oil your bowl. There we go. So the oil is just to make sure that your dough does not form a hard film when you leave it to proof. And then it will make it easier to work with when it's time to shape it. Now, if you make this into a ball right now, it's going to be easier to shape into balls when it's time to fit it into your pans. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate this. I'm going to divide this into two, just like that. Then I'm going to shape this into two round balls. There we go. And here's the second one. Bring this together, just like that. And it doesn't have to be accurate, because remember, you're still gonna form this. You're still gonna shape this again. So there we have that. And then this guy. Isn't that perfect? I'm gonna wash my hands, and then we're gonna cover this with plastic wrap and let it proof for 1 hour. Typically, I'd let this rise right here on the counter, but that's not as warm as I want it to be, especially because I want this to go pretty fast. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn on the light in my oven and throw this in there. The heat generated by the light is gonna be enough to proof your pizza. But what I'm gonna do, because I see a crisis coming up, is I'm gonna try and split these two up, because as they proof, because they're gonna puff up, they're gonna touch, and then I'm gonna have a hard time separating them. So what I'll do is come in here and I'll separate these guys. I'll put one to the side like that and this one that way. And there we go. Light on. And there that goes. Then I'm gonna set my timer for 1 hour. And 2 hours, 2 minutes short of an hour, and the dough balls have proved beautifully. Look at that, they've doubled in size. We can get away with taking them out of the oven right now, so there they are. Okay, 2 pans that look very different. This is not as glossy as this, but that's because I seasoned this before I put it away, and this has not been seasoned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray it with some oil. It's not gonna be seasoning it per se, but it's gonna work so that our pizza does not stick. I'm gonna give this guy a good shake, and again, this is just canola oil I'm gonna spray. We don't want to get too much on there. It's a good amount. I'm just gonna spread this all over the pan. And don't forget the sides as well. And I'm gonna do the same on this just because the oil has settled and it's moved to the side a little bit. In addition to the cooking oil that I just sprayed on the pans, I'm gonna use some cornmeal as well, just as a double layer to make sure that my pizzas don't stick. Now, if you don't have cornmeal, that's fine. You don't have to go out and buy a whole tub of cornmeal just for this. So just a liberal amount, a little less than a tablespoon will do. There we go. Now at this point, you'll notice that I haven't started preheating my oven, which I should have. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna preheat my oven for 125. And as that's going, we're gonna finish up setting this up. See what I was talking about, your dough falling in love? That's fine, we can still work with it. And it's gonna depuff a little bit, which is fine. See any bubbles? Pop them. So what we're gonna do is, look at that as the air escapes, look at the bubbles. That's a well aerated dough. It has enough air in it to work. So I'm just stretching this because I want it to fit in my pan. And at this point, you could also use a rolling pin, really. There you go. And I want to cover the pan like corner to corner. I don't want any spaces, so I'm gonna go and stretch this and make sure it fits. And this dough is big enough to fit all over. And again, if you want to use a rolling pin, if you think it's easier to use a rolling pin, please go right ahead and do that. And if when you're doing this, your dough at any point tears, don't stress about it. Just tear off your dough from somewhere else and cover the hole. When it bakes, it's gonna be so delicious, nobody's gonna notice those little things. And also you're gonna cover this with sauce, so nobody's gonna notice that. There you go. I believe I have it covered corner to corner. Okay, so I'm gonna put this aside and it's gonna prove for 15 minutes. And I'm gonna do the next one. I'm gonna take my second ball. Okay, so I have some store-bought pasta sauce. I'm gonna heat this in a pan. I'm gonna add a tablespoon of tomato paste, but first we're gonna get about a cup of this. It's about a cup or 3/4 of a cup. Again, I'm eyeballing it just based on the amount of pizza that I have. I don't want too much because I don't want it left over because I'm gonna heat it. Then I'm gonna grab a tablespoon of tomato paste. Now, when you open your tomato paste, do not put it in the fridge in your metal can. Put it in a separate bowl and spray it with some oil so it doesn't form mold. And that way your tomato paste will store for a very long time. And I just call it potato paste, but it's actually tomato paste. And give this a good mix. Okay, then I'm gonna taste this a little bit. I'm not a big fan of pasta sauce, but I'll taste this just to see if I need to adjust the seasoning. Yeah, it's pasta sauce, all right. You know what? I think it's good. I'm not gonna add anything to it. That's one of the advantages of using pasta sauce because you don't need to do anything to it. Just heat it up, mix it with your tomato paste, and bam, you're ready to go. So this is good and warm. We're gonna wait for the oven to heat up, and I'll bring you back to my island and we'll get together the toppings. So what we have here is some thick sliced pepperoni. Now this bag is a lot and I'm not going to be able to use all this up even if I'm making 2 pizzas. So what I'm going to do is I'll take what I need, and since this bag needs to be used within 7 days once you open it, What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this in a Ziploc bag and I'm gonna freeze it. That way, because I'm not gonna be making pizza again in 7 days. So the next time when I'm making pizza, I just bring this out of my freezer, take out what I need, and we'll be good to go. Cheese. I have low moisture mozzarella because I really want to reduce or use as little moisture on my pizza as possible. The dough is wet enough. You can get the already grated kind, or you can grate your own. Okay, let's start assembly. I'm gonna try and scrape off as much sauce off this as possible. I'm just gonna put it there. Let's go for it. So I'm gonna take a liberal amount of sauce. I'm just gonna spread this edge to edge. I don't want any corners not to have sauce. And that was like the perfect amount of sauce because not much left. Make sure that you don't have any white spots if you can avoid it. Because when it's time to put down the topping, I say topping because we're only going to use pepperoni. We're not going to have any white patches. Okay, and then I'm going to take the cheese and again generously sprinkle all over. And I'm going to put more cheese on one than on the other because I am lactose intolerant. You wouldn't tell by watching me cook, but yeah. Like my daughter says, milk doesn't like me. Okay, I'm gonna stop myself right there. And again, cheese, once you open it, you need to use it within a very short period. So if you don't use it all up, cheese freezes beautifully. Just put it in your freezer, and the next time you need to use it, just take it out and crumble it, and it's good to go. Pepperoni. I think that's good. Again, this is very greasy, so I'll wash my hands, and then maybe we can get a little more cheese on this. Not too much, not too crazy, but it looks good. And at this point, if your pizza looks anything close to this, you're doing it right. Now, let's take it to the oven. We're gonna open the door first because cast iron pans are notoriously heavy. First pizza. And please be careful, these ovens are really hot. I'm gonna get the second one. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? Because at the last minute I'm gonna broil this. I'm gonna put this in the top rack because that does not have cheese on top of it, so it can broil. If I put this there, then the cheese is gonna broil. And I'm gonna bring that there. And I'm gonna let this go for just 6 minutes. I know it's very precise. 6 minutes, and once the timer goes off, I'm gonna broil this on high so that it gets crispy, okay? Nobody wants soggy pizza, all right? 6 minutes, here we go. Six minutes. So I'm gonna turn this off because it's not gonna stop singing. So my oven has a quirk. For me to be able to turn on my broiler, I actually have to turn this off. So I'm gonna turn it off. Take a look-see, and it looks beautiful. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna broil this on high for 5 minutes. At some point, 5 minutes might be too much, 5 minutes might be too little. So how do you solve this? Do not move, do not take your eyes away. Stand there and keep an eye on your pizzas. 5 minutes is not too much. So this is me watching them. Understood. My pizza in the top rack, the pepperoni is getting really crispy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull it out. And this is coming along beautifully, but what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna put it up there for just 1 minute just because I want it to be slightly crispy but not toasty, slightly crispy but not burnt. So I'm actually not even gonna set time. I'm gonna eyeball this, and when it gets to the level of doneness that I want, I'll pull it out and I'll show you. This is just what I like. It's my preference. And there we go. This is bubbling. It's beautiful. And I think it's ready now. So I'm gonna turn the oven off. So I'm gonna take this to my stove. And look at that bubbling beauty. Okay, so you don't need to guess which one has more cheese, right? Look at that. It's so beautiful. I wish I could dig into that, but I'm gonna have to do with this. And it's also not really bad. This is the most delicious pizza you've ever had. And doing this from home like this, it really pays off. So let's get this off the pans and get them on the chopping board where we're gonna chop them up. So finally we get to use this baby. There's a story behind this paddle, but so you have got to be really careful with this cast iron pan because it is hot. Look at that. One touch and it's out. So we're gonna cut this up and listen to this crunch. This is gonna be good. Okay, so this is the first pizza. We're just gonna slide it off onto the plate. Then we're gonna get the second pizza. Look at that. I mean, this is beautiful. And you know what? It's gonna taste even better than it looks. Voila. Yes.